Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to our community meeting for Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland. I'm Abby Ellis with UCSF Community and Government Relations. We're here to talk to you about phase 2 and updates to the plan. I know we all spoke last in July, so we're excited to get back to you about what we've been working on, how we've incorporated some initial feedback, and then provide you with updates on what next steps look like. But for now, we'll wait just a minute or two as we let fellow neighbors and community members jump into this meeting, and then we'll get started shortly. There is live transcription at the bottom of the screen for those who are interested. And similar to last time, we'll take questions by raising your virtual hand. So if you click the reactions button down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a raise hand button there that you can select. And then we'll call on people in the order that they raise their hand. Val, will you go to the next slide? Thank you. So just a little housekeeping as we wait for people to join us. I know we're all very familiar with Zoom at this point, but just as a reminder, we are recording this meeting and it will be shared out through our email listserv for those who weren't able to attend or want to listen in or rewatch at another point in time. As I said, questions and comments will be taken through the virtual by raising your virtual hand down at the bottom of your screen. We will take questions during the presentation at 2 different points. So we'll do a brief welcome remarks from Paul Takayama and Matt Cook, and then take some questions and then get into the bulk of our presentation, which isn't too long. It's an update from where we last left off in July, and then take questions following that for Liz Epstein and James Peace. Next slide. Great. So like I said, for those who just jumped on, thank you for joining us. I've been admitting more neighbors in from the waiting room just to do a little logistical housekeeping for those of you who are new or just need a reminder of how UCSF runs our community meetings. We ask that you raise your virtual hand down at the bottom of your screen by clicking the reactions button and then clicking raise your hand, and we'll call on you then. The agenda will have some welcome remarks, updates from Children's Hospital of what's been going on with us since we last spoke, some background on the 2015 entitlements that got us to this point with phase 1 of the Oakland Campus Master Plan, and then an update on phase 2. Next slide. All right, so now I'll hand it over to Paul Takayama, Assistant Vice Chancellor of UCSF Community and Government Relations.
Great, thanks, Abby. Good evening, everybody. Thank you again for taking the time to join us tonight. People have busy schedules and busy lives, and so I appreciate you taking the time tonight. Next slide. Just quickly, whole reason why we're here tonight. Really kind of want to emphasize our collaboration with the neighbors, our willingness to kind of engage in this process. I think we all believe that engagement with the neighbors and getting your feedback on our projects eventually leads to a better product. We'll be engaging with the City of Oakland's planning review process, and of our commitment to kind of regularly update you on those conversations. Next slide. So Matt's going to kick us off with kind of an update what's happening at Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland. And after that, we'll have a update from Liz and James on phase 2. This is kind of where we are with the neighborhood planning process for phase 2. Really plan to, over the next several months, have regular meetings to talk about aspects of the plan. So I'll look forward to have that conversation over the next several months. And so I guess I'm handing it over to Matt Cook, the president of the UCSF Benioff Children's Hospitals. Matt?
All right, good evening, everybody. And as Paul said, thank you for joining us. We know that we are infringing on your time here, and but appreciate the fact that so many of you have joined. So before we get into the slides, just want to give you a COVID update from the perspective of where we're sitting. You know, with the Delta variant, we did see an increase in patients coming to the hospital. I think if you've been watching the news, you probably saw that children were impacted by this particular variant. The good news is in the Oakland hospital, we seem to be down to just, you know, a couple of patients here and there who are coming through, so down from our peak. And certainly hope that that continues to be the case. You know, you probably also saw the news over the last few days about the booster shot and whether that was going to be recommended or not. We're still sort of following that. It looks like we'll be able to vaccinate our employees and high-risk individuals, but I think the FDA guidance on that is still a little bit unclear. But we also do know that Pfizer is going to be filing end of the month for an emergency authorization for children under the age of 12 that are 5 or older. So that's also good news. So we're very hopeful. And as we continue to meet, we'll continue to update you on what we're seeing. So with that, I'll just move forward into our facilities update. So we had our ribbon cutting this morning for our new pediatric ICU, which is on the 2nd floor of the hospital. This is a big step forward in terms of the modernization of the campus. The ICU used to be an open ward type of unit, and now it's 21 private rooms and one double room. But it's literally 4 times the size of the unit that it's replacing. And we had the ribbon cutting this morning, and the activation is tomorrow. So at 9 o'clock tomorrow, we'll be moving the first patient in, and hopefully by the end of the day, we'll have moved all the patients in. So we view this as very positive. It's a beautiful unit. It reflects, you know, our commitment to enhancing patient care on the campus. And the staff have been just overwhelmingly positive about it. And I think they're just waiting to get in there. But it'll also be great for our families. They'll be able to stay in with the patient. So they're, you know, whoever's there. And it'll just be a very different experience for them. So, so again, great news and a reflection of our commitment to making sure that we keep advancing the Oakland Hospital. I also want to touch, if we can go to the next slide, I want to touch on another project that is forthcoming. So on 53rd Street in MLK, there's a building that the hospital owns, and it has been sort of a mixed use building, if you will. There's been some sort of back office type of functions in there, like human resources and some other programming. And we're planning to renovate this building completely, and we have our applications in with the city for the approvals that we need. The intent is to convert this building to become our outpatient behavioral health building. So the entire building will become behavioral health. And it's going to be a big step forward in our ability to provide those services for the patients that are in need. I think, as probably most of you know, behavioral health amongst children and adolescents has become an increasing problem across the country. We've not had a dedicated space to take care of them. On the outpatient side, this is our step 1. On the inpatient side, in the new hospital building, we are planning a dedicated inpatient unit. But this is really a great leap forward in what we can do for the community. So we have planned this out. The building is going to undergo a facelift and a tremendous amount of cosmetic work. It'll be so much nicer than when finished, and I think it'll be a great addition to making the making the neighborhood look better from the standpoint of what we have there. So if there are questions about that, I'll defer them to Liz Epstein, but in the meantime, I'm going to keep going. Next slide, please. Okay. And as we get to the new hospital project, which is probably what is really of interest for you all here, what we're really trying to do is accomplish a few things. We're trying to enhance our ability to provide patient and family-centered care. So the hallmark of any children's hospital is really a family-centered care model where we're asking the parents or the guardians in some situations to directly participate in the care of the patient. And one thing that makes that a lot easier to do are private rooms. And so as you probably know, in the hospital today, we have, with the exception of the PICU that's opening, that's really a challenge for us. We just don't have private rooms. And so the new hospital building is going to give us that. It's going to give us private rooms. And that's really what our patients and family expect from us at this point, not just from an environment standpoint and a privacy standpoint, but it's what we really need to do from a state-of-the-art care point of view, just in terms of infection control and the equipment that we need to use. This sort of bleeds into the next point, which is sort of state-of-the-art technology and operating rooms. The new hospital building will be utilizing the most up-to-date equipment. And one of the challenges we have today is our operating rooms are undersized as compared to the modern equipment that we try and use in them. So we'll be moving our operating theater into the new building when it's constructed, and that will give us a lot more flexibility in what we can do here from a surgical standpoint. I mentioned the mental health expansion in the last slide. We talked about the outpatient. We are planning a dedicated inpatient unit here. The real challenge we have with patients requiring acute mental health services today is that they have to leave the market. And so we're trying to mitigate that by building a dedicated unit. It'll be the first one in the Bay Area for children and adolescents. So just incredibly important part of what we're going to be doing. And then the last is what we're really looking for is a look and feel, an ambiance, an environment, one that just lends itself to healing, one that lends itself to collaboration, one that lends itself to positive interactions amongst our team and with the community. And so that's really how we're trying to envision this. We're trying to create an environment in which the most skilled people want to stay with us and want to come work with us if they're not here today. And so that's how we're thinking about this. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over for more specifics to James Pease and Liz Epstein as they walk through some additional slides. I think if there are questions, we can probably pause here and take them on anything that Paul or I said.
Great, thank you both. I saw there was one hand raised, but it was lowered and they chatted me their question, so I'll read it out loud. Oh, actually, Keen, I see your hand is up. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, so thank you very much, Abby. I appreciate that. Regarding the mental health, maybe I might have misheard because somebody called me, but I just wanted to be clear. Would there be an expansion in like the actual capacity of care that could be delivered, or would it be just the same amount of clinicians moved over to those new buildings?
No, it would give us the ability to expand our services, Keen, because right now, so the whole building would be dedicated to mental health services. Right now, there's only bits and pieces of the building that are used for that. So as we continue to hire physicians, psychologists, and other mental health providers, this will be the space in which they're able to provide their outpatient programming. So this allows an expansion.
Thank you.
Great, and I don't see any, oh, here's another hand. NV, you can go ahead and ask your question.
VG, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, someone else.
Oh, would you like to go first?
Oh, please go ahead.
Okay, you're VM and I'm VMV. So I work with National Union of Healthcare Workers, and we represent a lot of your highly skilled mental health clinicians. And what we're hearing from our members is that recruitment and retention is a real challenge because the skills and experience of our members really isn't honored by sort of giving them chances to move up and be recognized for their advanced skills. I know this has been a problem at UCSF as well, with the mental health clinicians there, the pharmacists, the other health professionals that, you know, they have given feedback that morale is really low. Their employee experiences not positive, and it's because of this same reason that their sort of advancements. They work really hard. They do research in the community. They work on new certifications and continuing education, and they've asked to be recognized for it by the hospital. And they're just not being recognized, and people are leaving and also choosing not to work at Children's Hospital, and I would imagine at UCSF as well. So I wonder, I think it's great to have facilities, but we know that so much of the important work of healthcare is human to human, with trained professionals who are incentivized to continue to develop their skills. So I wonder if there's some plan for that, and also for you know, keeping your current employees around, because Children's Hospital is such a great community of healthcare professionals who've really given their lives to this work.
So I guess, MV, what I would say to that is we're you know, highly committed to this area, and you know, we continue to recruit, and retention is always the most important part of what we do. We certainly don't want to have unnecessary turnover. We have evolving leadership in the mental health service line, we have behavioral health service line. So the entire leadership team is relatively new. And so we'll take your comments under advisement. I'm not sure it's exactly what we think we're experiencing, but I also don't want to negate your comments. So I think I'll just have to go back and you know, take a look at what our attrition is. But we are, you know, the one thing I would say about staffing right now is, you know, we are sort of in a national crisis. You know, there are a number of people that have left the workforce across the country that are just burnt out from the pandemic. And certainly the pandemic has highlighted the issue with mental health. And so the organization is firmly committed to it, and we'll see how that unfolds. But we'll go back and look at the data and see, you know, take your comments on board and see what we're seeing.
Great, thank you, Matt. And then a question, oh, actually, Fiji, do you want to ask your question? Thank
Yes,
you.
I'd like to ask my question, please. Regarding the mental health facility, I am into substance abuse counseling, and I'm just wondering, in that design, do you have an atrium?
I am going to defer to my colleagues on that, on the actual design. I'm not sure that the design is actually finalized yet, but if Liz or James, you could respond to that, I would appreciate it.
It's actually not a reconstruction of the interior of the building. So I'm not sure if in your role you have been in that. There is an entry lobby that's rather modest, but it is not being reconstructed to include something that I would describe as an atrium.
An outside area, okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
but
there is an outside area that will have natural elements of trees and seating that's going to be surrounding that back of the building. And just to clarify on the interior, we are doing aesthetic improvements so that based on just the age of the interior building, that was one of the things that we want to make sure we accomplished.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear there's going to be access to outdoors.
and
And thank
I'll
you
just
all.
add,
Oh,
Well, so I'll just add to this that we do intend to host another meeting that is focused on that project, so we can really talk about it in detail, and we can describe more what we're planning to provide in terms of a very appealing, comforting, and supportive landscaped environment for our patients and staff. And I think that we should be reaching back out to you fairly soon with information about that meeting, so we can really get into the details there.
Thank you.
Perfect, Liz. You took the words right out of my mouth. All right, so with that, there's no other hands raised. I did see one question that Matt responded to in the chat about the mixed use being just the services that we provide, not that there's residential in terms of mixed or commercial use housing. It's great. So we'll go to the next section. Liz, you are still up. Please feel free to take it away.
Great, thank you, Abby. So I'm going to describe what the planning that was undertaken in the early 2013 to 2015 years was for the improvements to the campus. And these were things that were described in the environmental review process and all of the planning and permitting processes that I know many of you took part in at that time. Please bear with me if I give you information that you already know quite well. I just want to make sure that people who are new to the process are oriented to where we started, and then we can move all together to where we're going. So if you'll please go to the next slide. So in 2015, there was a campus facilities master plan approved by the City of Oakland, and it included improvements on various parts of the campus. And just to orient you, going horizontally across toward the top of the site map is 53rd Street. And then the next horizontal street going toward the middle of the page is 52nd Street. And south of that, the triangular area is where the main hospital building is, bounded by Martin Luther King Jr. Way, 52nd Street, and then to the east, Highway 24. And what this shows is both what exists or what existed in 2015 and what was included in the first phase of improvements that were described in that 2015 plan. So if you note on this plan toward the upper left, there's I guess it's sort of a quadrangle that is a yellowish gold color. That is a new building that was constructed as part of phase one, which is the phase of construction that we're in now. And that is the outpatient center that you see behind me on my Zoom screen. That was completed in 2018 and opened. It allowed us to move all of the outpatient services to the north side of 52nd Street so that they were co-located for convenience of patients, families, and staff, and also allowed the space that some of them did occupy in the existing hospital to be turned to inpatient uses. So it made for a more sensible and streamlined and efficient use of space and better care delivery. I'm just going to pause for a second. B, I see that you have your hand up, and I'm happy to come to you when I finish, but I just want to check, is there something that...
No, go ahead.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure everybody's oriented to where we are and that I'm giving you information that's clear and useful. Okay, so also shown on this plan just above the new outpatient center is the new entrance to the main parking structure that is now off of Martin Luther King Jr. Way. If you recall, it was previously accessed off of 52nd Street by the signal at the crosswalk connecting the outpatient area of campus to the main hospital area of campus. And then moving to the right, you'll see a gray area that is identified here with a little bit of very hard to read print, which is a new service access to the outpatient center that was located behind the structures that front on 53rd Street and adjacent to the sports medicine clinic. So these were parts of phase one that were quite visible to the community, but phase one also includes things that are perhaps less visible. One of them is shown in the lower triangular area. There's a much smaller gold little quadrangle, and that represents the new central utility plant. And as you can imagine, there are tremendous utility needs to run this hospital. And so those were substantially upgraded over the last 6 years. And also not visible to you and not indicated with color coding is renovations that are occurring within the existing hospital. And Matt Cook just described to you the pediatric ICU, which will open tomorrow and is just being celebrated right now. And that is one of the major accomplishments of phase one. There are additional interior renovations that are still to occur as part of phase one. So that was a very long introduction to both the existing site plan and what has been occurring over the last 6 years since that approval in 2015. Please go to the next slide. So in those 2015 plans, other improvements were also envisioned, and I'm going to walk you through them, sort of dividing the areas of North Campus, this north rectangle that's bounded by 53rd Street, Highway 24, 52nd Street, and then to the west, Martin Luther King Jr. Way, and then other improvements that are in the triangular area south of 52nd, and again bounded by Highway 24 and MLK. So north of 52nd Street, I've already described the outpatient center. Things that are part of phase one are shown here again in that orange, consistent with the prior slide. And then those things that were included in the second phase are in the sort of purplish blue. So starting at 53rd Street, you'll notice that there are some arrows pointing to various things happening here. If you're familiar, at the east end of 53rd Street, there's now a modular building that the hospital owns, and that is to be removed and then replaced with 2 buildings that will be relocated from elsewhere. Those will be relocated from 52nd Street, but I will describe those a little more as we go forward. There exists currently on Dover Street our family house, which provides a place for our patient families to stay while their children are receiving care. And the 2015 plan envisioned expanding that family house space by connecting to the back of buildings that now exist on 53rd Street and being able to have sort of a unified family residence area. Then moving a little bit toward the south at the corner of Dover and 52nd Street is a new clinical support building. And this is a 3-story building that is to house support services. So not direct patient care, but the many people who do contribute to that care that need to be on campus. That is the extent of the changes north of 52nd Street. Now, if we go south of 52nd Street, again, I touched on the interior renovations that are underway in the central utility plant. what was also envisioned at that time was a new hospital building. In fact, 2 new hospital buildings. One was described as a link building. It was a very creative way of describing that it linked the old and the new buildings. And another was the patient pavilion, which was more inpatient rooms and services in support of those. The helistop, which is now in this area, would have moved to the top of the link building. And you might be able to see it indicated here. Additionally, we've changed the access and sort of the focal point of entry for the main hospital. And you can see a drive that runs parallel to Highway 24 from 52nd Street that leads to what is the south area of the main hospital buildings. This included improvements to that entryway and landscaping and creating an ease of entry into the building for patients and families who are coming for care. Additionally, at the very bottom of the triangle is what was a proposed parking structure. And that was to try to provide proximal parking for those coming to the main hospital and allow that parking to be on the same side and not involve crossing 52nd Street. Also shown on this plan are a variety of landscape improvements that are, indicated in the green. So that's sort of a high-level overview. Again, north of 52nd, the expansion of Family House, relocating the 2 buildings that now front on 52nd at the southeast corner of Dover and 52nd to where the modular unit is on 53rd, and then south, a new link building, a new patient pavilion, of course, the helistop, the new main entry driveway, and a parking structure. So that's where we went in 2015. Anybody have any questions?
I think, do we want to go to next slide for James's portion?
I can wait
right.
there too if there's any questions on that piece.
Yeah, well, B, do you want to ask your question now? Then?
Just put it in chat. I just wanted to know, will acquisition of private homes be implicated in the expansion of the family building on Dover?
No, every property where changes are proposed is owned by the hospital and has been for some time.
Okay, thank you.
B,
I have friends who live on Dover.
B, did you want to ask your question now? It looks like you might have set your phone down. So maybe we'll move forward with James and then we'll come back to you after his presentation. James?
All right, good evening. So my name is James Pease, and again, thank you for being here tonight. And I'm with the design and construction team working at the hospital campus. Let's go to the next slide. So we're gonna go into essentially a fair amount has changed with healthcare, and we've gone back and looked at the design from 2015 and made updates to what we think is the best fit for inpatient care on this campus. And so, as Liz said, phase 2 is really a continuation of phase 1. Phase 1 built the Outpatient Center 2 building, which is my background, and allowed a number of services to move out of the hospital building. And then the second part of the phase 1 is renovations within what's labeled as D&T, the Diagnostic and Treatment Building, which allows us to move inpatient services out of the BC and the AB wings. Both of those wings do not meet the state seismic requirements for inpatient, and is part of a statewide based move out of older non-seismically compliant buildings into better infrastructure. So as we've looked at this, there are a couple of modifications that we're proposing to the phase 2 plan from what Liz showed is what the thinking was in 2015. And I'll stay here for a second. A big piece of that is relooking at what we do with the AB wing, which is the original building on the campus and is used as, will be used in the very near term for light administrative use, but won't be able to be used for that going forward due to the seismic compliance of the building. And before we change slides, I'll point to the helideck there. So that's essentially like a 4-story steel structure that's in the middle of the back of the campus there where the helicopters land. And so a lot of the thinking has been around that link building and how do you build a new pavilion and make sure we always have helicopter access, which is required for the trauma designation for the campus. And then so we're proposing, let's go to the next slide. And I'll talk first about the north of 52nd, and then we'll come to essentially south of 52nd. So we're proposing to split phase 2 up into essentially 2 components, which we're calling 2A and 2B. And an easy way to think about this is 2A is mostly the work north of 52nd Street, which shows that new clinical support building. And we haven't done design on that building, so there's opportunity to engage in what this building looks like. We've submitted what's called a pre-zoning application to the city, which lays out this plan. And we're in the process of having a planner assigned and starting discussions with the city. So our intent is to maintain the original 2015 plan above 52nd. You'll see that temporary, potential temporary loading dock site. Draw your attention to that. One of the things that has become a logistical challenge on the project is the existing loading dock for the entire facility is in the BC wing off of MLK Junior Way. And when the BC building is torn down, there's no loading dock access to the hospital. So in order to keep the hospital up and running during the period of construction for the new pavilion, we need to find a temporary loading dock. So one option was off of Dover there. And then another option is over where the AB building is currently. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So we understand that having trucks and additional traffic on Dover is really not a good solution. So what we're looking to do is locate that temporary loading dock over behind the D&T building. And then at the end of the project, the new pavilion would have a loading dock in it. And so that would be turned over to what we're calling a campus green or a park-like setting. And then loading dock would stay in its current location. Other parts of 2A, there's a retaining wall which runs essentially between the CSB and Highway 24. And then it also runs south of 52nd all the way along the what would be the eastern side of the site along Highway 24. And there's 2 reasons to do that retaining wall. There is a PG&E line that was installed before the hospital was built that runs right through the middle of the pavilion footprint. And this doesn't feed the hospital. This feeds much of the neighborhood on the other side. And so we're proposing to relocate that PG&E line around the bottom of the site. So it will stay on the hospital property, but be routed out of the way so the new building wouldn't sit on top of it. And the retaining wall needs to be pulled back closer to the freeway to allow space to install that PG&E line at the foot of it. And then it also creates more space for drive access to get cars to drop off in front of this new building. Other things I would point out, the new pavilion, essentially to build the link building in the 2015 plan, you have to build 2 buildings. And the buildings are regulated by the Office of State Health Planning and Development, OSHPD. So it's a lengthy approval and build process. So it'd probably take something like 2 years to build the link building to allow you to put the helipad in and then tear down the helipad to build the new pavilion. We're proposing to shorten the construction duration significantly by building the building in one lift And you'll see the notch out of the building where the first and second and the B representing the basement, so that we can keep the existing helipad in place during the entire construction of the pavilion and build it all in one construction sequence. So we think we can save at least a year of construction for the overall building and minimize the impact. Squeezing the footprint, we're proposing a taller building and adding an inpatient mental health unit, which was not in the 2015 plan. And also, as Matt mentioned at the beginning, the new modern OR suite. So imagine going from 400 square foot operating rooms to over 900 square feet, which is the modern standard today. That new building gets taller, but it leaves a significant amount of space now for a surface parking lot, which allows us to put more of the money for the project into inpatient care and less of it into a concrete parking structure. We are proposing to take down the AB building, which requires, if it's even possible, a significant seismic upgrade just to keep office in there. It doesn't meet any of the current seismic standards. And also, when the BC building comes down, a lot of the utility services that feed the AB building are in the BC wing. So we essentially have to completely recreate the central plant for the AB building in order to keep it operating. And so we're proposing that it's a better investment for the community to put that money into the inpatient pavilion as opposed to renovating what could only be used as essentially light office use. So I've covered a lot there. We're demoing all the other structures that are essentially south of the main hospital. Those people will move either to the CSB or other office uses within the city of Oakland. There will not be, we're not replacing as much office or administrative space on the campus as we have now. So those will remain within the city, but will not be on this campus, and then replacing it mostly with this inpatient pavilion. Let's go to the next slide. Is a high level overview, and we can take questions on that scope of what we think our schedule looks like. I mean, this is an educated guess of a 10-year project duration. We've done high level master planning and programming. So that's figuring out what we think the hospital needs as far as number of beds, number of operating rooms. We've figured out what that equates to in square footage, which is what we've shown with this massing and essentially blocking and massing. And we've started the entitlements process with the City of Oakland, which just means that we've submitted our zoning pre-application. Really what that allows us to do is start a conversation. So there's not a design that's been submitted. And so there's time for us to engage with this group and others in the community to make sure that we put a project together that makes sense. The phase 2A and 2B allows the design to be broken up into two packages. It allows the clinical support building to move along faster, where we haven't made any changes to the 2015 plan. And what that allows is that building to be ready to decant employees that come out of the buildings that are demoed. And then the phase 2 is able to shift that design out to allow for more engagement, most likely a focused EIR due to some of the changes in the program. And so that'll go through kind of a full transparent review process. And all of this comes together with first patient in 2030. So, and that's moving quickly. And I think that's a good overview of where we're at today and what we're thinking, and happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, James. Val, you can stop sharing your screen so we can put gallery mode on. It feels a little bit more like a conversation that way. All right, so I know we have a couple questions lined up, but for anybody else who has a question, please raise your virtual hand or send me a chat to let me know. So first up is B.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I live at 739 Eileen Street. And my complaint is about that lab across the street that's doing COVID testing in the parking lot that children's rented to this Renegade Bio. It has made the neighborhood just intolerable. It is so bad over here with the parking, people double parking in your driveway. My car got hit the other day, me backing out and someone coming from across the street hit me. So it's time that something be done. One of the ladies, I think her name is Hillary, came over here, and well, it was like, it's not our fault. Well, I know if you had somebody out there directing traffic, I think things would go a lot better. I'm sure some of the other neighbors have things to say about this also.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. And I think I encourage neighbors who are nearby and have had similar issues, please reach out to either myself or raise your hand if you want to talk about it now. And so I'll share that we've connected with the team that manages the contract with Renegade and are working with their security and the maintenance crews in the area to make sure that we can help to address this issue as best we can. And we appreciate you bringing it to our attention so that we have the opportunity to try.
It's been, it's been like when they moved in here, Children's Hospital nor Renegade Bio notified any of the neighbors that this was opening up, which I don't think is respectful and fair to the neighborhood. This is a residential neighborhood. And you have no idea what we've had to tolerate for the last year. Every day I have to go out and pick up mass off the street in front of my house, Starbucks coffee cups, where their patrons get out of the car and just drop everything.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. I can understand how frustrating that would be, and we'll do our best to try and address that. And I know that we've spoken on the phone a couple times about this, and we will continue to work on it and escalate it as we need to. And this is a proper venue to do so too as well. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Thank you for listening.
Absolutely. And then the next question was from Jamae. And I know, Jamae, our tech has been trying to connect with you. So you've been chatting, but can't quite connect to audio. So I'm not sure if that got resolved or not, or if there's a way that maybe you can chat your question to Liz and then she could ask it for you. If that would be the best way if we can't get your audio on, right? Okay. I'll wait a couple of seconds, Liz, if you don't mind chatting to me just to see if we can do it that way, since it seems like the audio seems to be giving her some trouble. So next up is Kathleen.
Hello. I live right across from the Children's Research Hospital, and I have the daycare, and I've had the daycare here for 10 years. So the traffic is not coming from my house. I'm licensed for 14, but I work alone. So I only have at the most 4 sets of parents coming out. So the traffic is not coming from me.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. Claudette.
Hi. Hi.
There we go.
Hi. I have a couple of questions, and I also have some concerns. I live across the street from the research center also. And the first concern I had was when you all decided that you would have the COVID testing and the shots over across the street, I think that the neighborhood in the 700 block should have been notified that this was going to happen. no one sent any flyers around or anything. It just all of a sudden, one day we look out the window and all these cars are lined up out there. And so that was my first concern. And then the second concern I have is the amount of traffic that's out there in the parking lot. And we have people that are double parking every day or so. I have to go out here and ask people to move out of my driveway. There are people that are parking their cars in the driveway and getting out and walking across the street to get their COVID test. And it's a safety issue. And I don't know what can happen with it. And then the other issue that we have is on this block, we have 2-hour permit parking. Our streets are not being able to be swept on my side of the street on the 2nd and the 4th Tuesday of every month. We have street sweeping. Well, our streets are never getting swept now because there are constant cars always on the street. It's just, I don't know what can be done about that problem. And then we have people that are smoking, people that work at the hospital that are coming out smoking. And I know when I spoke to you last week, Abby, you said that there was the possibility that you all could get some signs out there, you know. And I have a grandbaby here, and sometimes I open up my door and I can smell the smoke coming in. I don't know what the problem is with why there's so many people smoking over there, you know. And my grandbaby looks out the window and she sees those people smoking, and I caught her imitating them one day, and that really upset me. You know, this should not be happening. A 4-year-old watching people smoking out there, and then she's imitating what she see going on. And she told me the other day, she said, "Gammy, I see that man out there smoking again." And this is really bothering me, you know. So I don't know what can be done about any of these problems that are going on. But the street sweeping is a big issue. And the parking in the driveway is this, I would say, is the second issue. So, you know, I don't know how you can address any of these problems, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. So thank you for listening to me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Lee. And again, thank you for calling me earlier to talk about this and then coming to the meeting to share your experience. Like I said, then we are working on getting signs up to help direct the flow of traffic and parking and to help mitigate the no smoking rule that UCSF does have on our properties. And so hopefully,
so my understanding is that Renegade was supposed to have people reserve a spot, and it doesn't sound like that's happening. Are they just taking them just kind of as they drive up? Or because I think we should probably get in touch with Renegade to make sure they're doing what they promised to do.
Yeah.
Today. I saw a man today out there, but no, they're blocking all of our front driveways, and the streets are being crowded. Even I saw the man today tell one of the people to, you know, you can pull in, but they were like, no, we don't want to pull in. So, you know, they just parked the cars and went, you know, walked across the street. But it's been very busy, and I did not know that. I thought it was a temporary deal, and then all of a sudden I hear they have a contract. But it's very busy. Yeah, and my kids have nap time from 12:30 to about 3. So I noticed that around, I guess 1-ish, they go for lunch. I'm not for sure. But yeah, it's just really, really, really busy and not very safe also.
So Jimmy, do you want to say something?
Hi. Oh, you can say, you can hear me. Hi, this is Jimmy. And I have a question of the leadership team, please. We on 53rd Street are asking to please talk with us. Let us know what you are doing and what you won't be doing, and what can we do to get along with each other. 53rd Street, I live in the 700 block, and we take the brunt of most of what has gone on with this phase 1. And with phase 2 coming up, we need to be talked to and let us know what you're going to do, Please, we're asking you to be fair to us, please.
Thank you, Jemay. And we are certainly committed to having regular meetings to talk about not only phase 2, but 770 53rd Street, the project that Matt discussed earlier, and these ongoing issues that aren't necessarily just related to Corey, but in general, the impacts that Children's Hospital may have in the community, and to do our best to try and mitigate those. Jamie, were you going to add something?
Yes, hi, my name's Jamie Phillips. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and I'll take on the Renegade since they are a tenant that's subleasing space and address the issue. So I'll work with getting the communication back to Abby, to you all. So I just want you to know that it's going to be on my radar. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. I'll forward you the emails I've had with them so far, and we can hopefully get this moving. Miss Lee, I see that your hand is still raised. Did you want to add something else?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I did speak with the people at Renegade, and the man I spoke with told me he was taking the information down, and I never heard anything back from him. He said he was going to get back to me. I never heard anything. So I guess my concern wasn't that important.
I'm sorry to hear that. And I'm glad that you're here now, and that, you know, we touched base last week, and hopefully we can start moving forward on this in a better, more proactive way.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions raised? I've seen some have come through in the chat, so I can read those out. But I encourage you to raise your hand if you have any questions that you want to ask of Paul, Matt, Liz, or James about phase 2 and the proposed changes. And so one of the questions that came in, well, there's a couple of them. How is UCSF planning to divide up the construction projects? Will both phases be designed, built, managed by the same designers or general contractors? Will this be by building instead?
So I can speak to that one, and the answer is we don't know yet. We have essentially a master architect on board who's done programming and the graphics that you saw so far. A lot of it depends on the conversations around 2A and 2B. And so they could be done together, or they could be split up, and there's, as you can imagine, pros and cons to both. So we haven't made any decisions around that yet. I can take the phase 2A around traffic coming off of 24 on the MLK exit. So this is something that was definitely looked at as part of the 2015 approvals. My understanding is the way traffic and trips are looked at has also changed for pretty much every city since 2015. So we will be looking at it again. But we're not proposing to change what was reviewed before, but it'll still get looked at again publicly.
Great, thank you, James. And so there's been a couple of questions about parking that have been sent to me, so I'm going to read them out loud. The first one is, how many parking spaces will the revised surface parking lot be versus the originally planned parking structure? James?
So at a high level, the surface parking lot is around 200 spaces. I think the structured parking lot was in the 300 range. We've also changed the mix of uses that are on the site. So again, that's part of the traffic that will get looked at. We think we're providing the right amount of parking spaces for the use on the site, but that'll be a public process to make sure that we've got it right.
Great, thank you. And then another question that came in was, if an additional floor will be added to the hospital for mental health care, will that add more beds to the hospital as a whole? The original plan was that the number of beds wouldn't increase.
Matt, do you want to take that?
Yeah, no, it's the building's a different shape rather than adding more beds. You know, one of the reasons why the building is a different shape is that the California code changed in between the time that the 2015 plan was submitted and where we are today, we have to build the patient care rooms larger than if we had built this building, 5 or 6 years ago. So it's not about the number of beds, it's about the size of the rooms.
Thank you, Matt. All right, let me just keep track of the questions that I'm asking here. And then one of the questions that came in was the hospital agreed to pay for permit parking through the original date of completion of the new inpatient building. Will that continue now that the date has been extended? Liz, do you happen to?
I'll jump in here. Yes, I would expect that will continue, through the whole master plan period. But certainly, that's what we're anticipating.
Great, thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised at the moment. And I think that I've covered most of the questions in the chat. Give me 1 second just to look back through to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, here's another one. One map shows a parking structure at the south end, but another map shows the surface parking. And that was what James was speaking to earlier. One of the changes between the phases is that the initial phase 2 had parking structure. The new phase 2B is the surface parking lot, and that's the parking number change as well.
I think the other thing we should emphasize about parking is because of COVID, we migrated to a different model. We have people who are now working remotely, and we're going to remain in some sort of hybrid work model. That's sort of the reality of how businesses have shifted their work. And so we don't expect the same number of people from a staff standpoint to ever be on site as they were pre-COVID. And so that's one of the reasons why the traffic needs to be re-examined, as James said, as well as the parking. But we're not expecting the same number of employees to ever be on site as at the same time as they were before COVID.
Thank you. All right, I think that is the end of the questions. So one of the last questions that came in through the chat was, will there be future meetings like this? And the answer is yes, we will continue to meet with you as we have updates on the plan, but also as we incorporate the feedback that we receive from you all into the plan. Our next steps are we're waiting for the City of Oakland to get back to us, and we will send out an email notification and a postcard, much like we did for this meeting, to the same list and neighbors to let them know of our upcoming meeting. All right, and with that, I will say good night and thank you all for joining us. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions in the meantime. abigail.ellis@ucsf.edu. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
It remains a go-to choice.